There we go. Figured out how to get the intro working for these live streams. Anyway, what's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in. Joining me here on Friday, July 19th, Jordan Sather reporting on the liberation of the human farm. And they say that the revolution won't be televised, but it kind of is. It just won't be revolutionized or televised on their channels, but you can damn well plug in your TV and televise the revolution on your own channels, can't you? So I thank you for putting me on your screens, putting me on your TVs, and let's take a quick look at the itinerary for this brief. What are we going to be discussing? Q, most definitely, some new drops to cover, and QAnon baby. What a Q proof that was. Beautiful one. Epstein, massive document dumps imminent. So prepare for that. And then I got some never before seen photos of the inside of Epstein's planes that came out that we'll discuss. A few other things politically, and then we'll jump into some topics all across the board. As you guys know, I like to go big picture, so we'll touch on space, Area 51, UFOs, a little bit of physics, scientists saying they've teleported something into space for the first time, but first time? Yeah, there might be some secret programs out there that have done that before. And then what else? Some chemtrail news. There's some theories going around that chemtrails have been turned good or something to that effect. I've got some thoughts on that, so sit tight. And then towards the end of the video, we'll be taking a look at vaccine news. They're saying Trump wants to prepare an executive order to, quote, overhaul flu vaccines. So we'll see. We'll take a look at that. Monsanto GMO wheat being found out in a field. Doesn't sound important, but these sorts of things, I mean, it's not Q, it's not exciting politics, but these are very important topics. And then some earth changes, some noctilucent clouds, news I found in some science journals, but I want to cover it because I've seen these things before, and they're very interesting, and what they're telling us in these science journals isn't really the full story. We're sort of seeing some symptoms of a lot of electrical changes going on in our solar system here. But anyway, to begin, let's get into Q's drops, but first of all, shout out to a sponsor of this channel in the Q coin, Great Awakening coin. Let's see if I can get this in for the camera. Might show it, might not. The Q coin, you know, I've had some people message me and tell me in person that they've gotten these, passed them along as gifts, and people just love these. There's not much else I can say other than they just make awesome gifts. And imagine, I mean, in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, handing down something like this to a child or a grandchild, it's just a cool way to commemorate a piece of history. And you can get one for $17, of course, and you can get two for $5 off, entering in Jordan as the promo code. So you can check that out at greatawakeningcoin.com. Links will be below. Now getting into Q's drops. First of all, QAnon baby. Incredible stuff here. It's funny, you know, a couple nights ago, I was too busy to watch Trump's rally, but I was able to tune in for the last, say, 15 to 20 minutes. And when I tuned in, heard his speech, and then the baby thing happened. And whatever feed I was watching on YouTube, it didn't pan or zoom into the baby, so I didn't see it. I just heard Trump making a mention of it during his speech. So I couldn't tell what was going on, and then it ended, and I logged onto Twitter and started seeing all the pictures of it, and I just said, oh my God, incredible stuff there. Then a few minutes later, Q posted this on the boards. Look at that. Look at that. A little human there with the Q on their back. And apparently, this baby wasn't just held up to the cameras, but the parents said that they've rotated so everybody could see it. You know, so this isn't something that we can pass off as people couldn't see it. And then Q also posting here a link to a tweet saying outside the standard deviation, and this one is extra mind-blowing. So let's take a look. There was a drop made back in October of last year. 8 months ago? This person posted, what are the odds? What are the frickin' odds of this? QAnon baby was the handle of the tweet that Q linked back in October. And if you were following Q back then, remember QAnon baby? He was the guy that apparently was able to go meet Trump backstage and was able to get a picture of him that was sent to him a few weeks later. And he said that he posted on 8chan apparently that he asked Trump about Q. And Trump said something pretty vague, but basically said, they're good people. They're good people. And QAnon baby went on the 8chan and said that. Anyway, Q posted about it back then in October and said, important moment in time, the picture will be the signifier. The signifier will, quote, force the Q, and the Q will be answered. Now look at this. QAnon baby right here. Q basically saying outside the standard deviation, meaning that mathematical impossibility. This stuff is planned, and you can see how many months in advance these things are planned. I mean, this is absolutely incredible. Something like this, they've been waiting. And then in the next drop, Q saying, date today, the 17th. Most definitely was the 17th yesterday. How many coincidences before mathematically impossible right there for Anons and Patriots and those who make the choice to delve into this stuff, understand it, and see what's actually going on. You can just imagine how Q Team feels when they're cooking up these proofs for us and then putting them out there, and they're just watching millions of people go absolutely crazy over this. And I still have yet to see very little out of the mainstream media about this. I think I've seen one article in the Rolling Stones, but they don't want to touch it. They don't want to touch it. So what else are they going to have to do maybe to force the question? They're literally doing all they can to just say, hey guys, ask it. We've got babies being held up with Qs on their backs at rallies. How many other proofs do we have too? Air Force One call sign being Q, and just many, hundreds now. So we'll see. Waiting for that question, most definitely. Next drops here. Q saying Google unfairly influenced the election in 2016. This tweet of Senator Ted Cruz interviewing somebody in Congress there, and he was an expert that basically said Google did swing millions of votes toward Hillary in 2016. Still didn't work, did it? And 2020, it's pretty much going to be a landslide already. Those polls, they all lie. I saw this Woman for Trump event. It was a Woman for Trump event held in Pennsylvania, I want to say, a couple of days ago. And this place was full of a bunch of women supporting Trump. And there were more people at this Women for Trump event than there were at pick any presidential candidate's rally, any of them. So those polls really show Donald Trump losing to any of these presidential candidates. Come on, guys. You know the news is fake. You know how much fake science there is out there. Fake everything. It's just the grand illusion. But Q saying sheep no more. Next drop. Q asks 8chan to revert back to original form. So this is just some restructuring that was going on the boards. If you don't frequent 8chan or frequent the boards, this isn't really pertaining to you, but nevertheless, there's just certain ways, certain codes, certain sort of ideals that they like to follow on there to make all the information very accessible, easy to research and whatnot. So that's that. Thanks to everybody making those boards run. I don't get on them as much as I like to, but time to time I hop on, see what people are saying. Good times, lots of shills, but lots of jokes and good times. And good research on there, too. Next drops, this one here. Epstein Island Temple resembles a Turkish bathhouse in Syria. Q saying symbolism will be their downfall. So much said in that one little statement. Symbolism will be their downfall. When you look at everything they do, the jewelry they wear, the rings they wear, the logos they put on their corporations, on their businesses, the code language, the code names we use. We'll talk about a code name that Q linked here soon. Just understanding all this stuff. That's how they speak to each other. That's how they try to avoid public scrutiny and people figuring out what they're really doing. And when you research their symbolism, mind-blowing. It sheds a whole light on a lot of their occult or hidden practices. But then again, you can also use symbolism for good. And we're seeing that with the Q symbol right there, aren't we? So incredible, using what they use right back against them. What happens when the public learns the truth? Oh, one quick note on this last drop, too, about Epstein Island Temple resembling the Turkish bathhouse. This goes back, their occult beliefs, the powers that be, their occult beliefs, it spans, well, number one, it spans back centuries, but number two, it spans religions. How do I want to say this? I want to say that all religions sort of have been infiltrated, and then theirs, they take bits and pieces from all of them and, of course, subvert that for their own sort of maniacal beliefs. They believe themselves to be this sort of genetically pure bloodline race, and the rest of us swine in essence. So very, very deep, hard stuff to deal with, but nevertheless, if you understand the symbolism they use and their beliefs, it doesn't matter what you believe, it matters what they believe. And they pick signs and symbols from traditions around the world and sell us basically the watered down forms of them. So that's that. What's next? What happens when the public learns the truth? And Q reiterating some drops about division. I tweeted about this yesterday when I was happy to see Q sort of reiterating the same sentiments, but they divide us in every way, shape, and form. They divide us religiously, they divide us politically, they divide us with all of this. So the label attachments, guys, those label attachments are very dangerous. If you hug onto and attach yourself onto a label, you're sort of boxing yourself in. It's a box that you're putting around yourself, and it can limit your thinking in a lot of ways. And people label themselves all across the board with religions and ideologies and belief systems, and even getting into diets and all sorts of different things, So, rant there. Next drop. It's going to be staggering the amount of names. Q linking a Vanity Fair article saying panic in D.C. And this Vanity Fair article discusses those document dumps that are coming. It's going to be staggering the amount of names is the headline. As Jeffrey's case grows, the Epstein case grows, more grotesque Manhattan and D.C. brace for impact. And it's not just Manhattan and D.C., but Les Wexner, his connections in Ohio. This stuff spans globally too. Was Epstein an intelligence asset, as we've heard rumors of? But what intelligence agency, foreign or domestic, was he working for? So a lot of names are going to be coming out. And as Zero Hedge reports on here, Zero Hedge reports on the Vanity Fair article and adds a little bit into it. What's more, they write here, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit will release approximately 2,000 pages of documents over the next several days, which might reveal sex crimes committed by numerous prominent American politicians, powerful business executives, foreign presidents, well-known prime minister, and other world leaders. Other famous names associated with Epstein include, I didn't even think of these names or know about them, but pretty weird, LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman, Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg. Everybody's trying to distance themselves from Jeffrey Epstein right now. Everybody. But here's a tweet that Zero Hedge posted about with Elon Musk next to Jeffrey Epstein's handler / girlfriend / whoever, Ghislaine Maxwell. So, what are the true connections between all these people? Definitely would like to know that. Back to Q's drops. One on Facebook here. Q saying, worth remembering, Facebook survey asks users if they condone pedophilia. Yeah, they're trying to gauge public interest in all this stuff because they want to normalize the hell out of it. They've been trying to do this for a little while now, months if not years, trying to normalize these things, insert it into the public consciousness in this innocent way. Age is just a number. Yeah, but consent is also a damn thing, right? And being's awareness of what the hell they're getting themselves into. Check out Mother Jones. Saw this article come out of Mother Jones just yesterday. Why are right-wing conspiracies so obsessed with pedophilia? So here the corporate fake news media is trying to put these topics into the fake news and conspiracy box, that label, right? And it's just incredible the lengths that they go to totally brainwash the public about all of this. They're having to pay this reporter, pay these graphic designers. There's a lot of time and effort that go into these articles and the lengths they go to try to weave these false narratives. This article goes into news from the 70s and 80s about these child sex abuse cases being brought against daycares and how they fell apart way back then. And then they loosely try to tie it into things like Pizzagate and QAnon now. And of course, they absolutely destroy, as they always do, what QAnon actually is in this article. And they also, later on in it, feature number one, Travis View. Travis Yu, we've seen everywhere, the Washington Post, all over the fake news media. He trolls around Twitter himself, spreading all sorts of fake news. And they also reference Anna Merlan. What a coinkydink. What a synchronicity. I just mentioned her in my last video I did a couple of days ago. Anna Merlan in her book, Republic of Lies, American Conspiracy Theorists and Their Surprising Rise to Power. So, again, every single time they need a convenient narrative, they're choosing these books because they have the lies they need in them, essentially. And then, of course, they try to attack Liz Crokin here. So, another notch on her belt. Another gold star for Liz Crokin. Feature in some corporate fake news media. So they're trying to normalize these things, and it's disgusting. And the way they're doing it, saying, oh, you know, what's the first line of this, the subtext? It's not really about the kids. It's about fears of a changing social order. I want change. Don't get me wrong. I'm all about change. That's why, in fact, we're here. Q's here. But we're not trying to change in that path. We're trying to change things for the better and bring back common sense, bring back, truth, and these sorts of things into the picture. Now, next drops, let's see here. Q saying explore further into Epstein's temple, the symbolism, the occult references, I want to say dark occult references around Epstein's island. Q also saying here, note the date of the post, November 2017. Note events happening today. In other words, Q was first dropping about Epstein's temple the 11th of November 2017. I mean, nearly 2 years ago. So all this stuff coming right back around. It's just, what more proof do you need? Truly. All these drops are going to come back into the future, and we'll see news breaking about it. So think about topics all across the board, not just FISA, D-Class, Epstein's temple, Linda Rothschild, all these names coming back into the picture. I mean, what's going to come out about Ray Chandler? What's going to come out about the other drops across the spectrum? Things like the big pharma and things like the, the space programs outside of public domain. I think in year, 2 years, the future, it will come back to proof past, and we're going to see all sorts of big disclosures about many different things. Getting back into the drops. So, Jeffrey Epstein, primary purpose of this article, basically mainstream media trying to shape stories about Jeffrey Epstein here. I missed this one earlier. Former IT contractor for Epstein says he quit over concerns about revealing pictures and topless young women. So more people trying to distance themselves from it, and the fake news spinning it in their ways. And the next few drops, we'll finish up with Q and then move on here. We've got these drops, these photographs, the Jihad Squad, and then one photo of a news story, Trump nominating the first black woman to be a Marine general. And this is just to combat, of course, the narratives, the racist narratives, all of that they're trying to bring back into the picture now. Read any of them, NBC, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times. You're seeing the same damn thing in a new outlet. So that's that. And then these here, the clocks, the watches, worth remembering. And then Q says, if you look close enough, you might see. Let's take a look at this watch. Number one, if you look close enough, you can see a reflection there. And does that look like somebody to you, a possible president of this country, or possible Q+, maybe. But then some people were noticing that this watch says the 19th. And with Q saying worth remembering in a drop yesterday, a lot of people have been excited for something to happen today at this particular time. And we've sort of passed that time, I believe, and I don't think we've had anything groundbreaking, but nevertheless, this might be a sort of proof where we get news stories come out maybe this weekend or in weeks after this one, and then the news story will point back saying something occurred at this time, at this day. Could also be maybe August 19th or something to that effect. But if you guys remember that John McCain proof, Q saying last year in 30 days, John McCain is going to return to the news. And what we found 30 days later is that in the news reports, they said that he passed at the exact same time that Q drop was posted exactly 30 days prior. So that was a way that they made a proof for themselves, validated themselves. So we'll see what breaks, and we'll note the day and time on this watch to see if maybe something happened today that we'll learn about in the future. Maybe something will happen on August 19th, etc., etc. So eyes open for that. And now let's move on and do a few different things. So the photos of Epstein's plane, This one, I'll link below. That's not the one I wanted. Hold on here. Technical difficulty there. Lost my link. But anyway, I'll post a link to a Daily Mail article down below where you can see the inside of Jeffrey Epstein's planes. And it's got pictures of his pilot posting with big planes. And then moving on into a press conference that Donald Trump had on Iran yesterday. Now, there's been a lot of war posturing going on with Iran, allegations of drones being shut down and Iran taking over ships. But that's not the point I want to make here. The point I want to make is look at this behind him. It's a symbol of a sun. Let's get a better shot here. Shout out to Rod Sneaky on Twitter. Got a good shot of it. Look at this Masonic. It's basically a Masonic sun symbol behind him. And what Rod Sneaky posted here is that this is in the exact same sort of configuration as the sun, which turns out to be a Masonic sun, on Epstein's island. So that's sort of blatant, in-your-face, vague messages of them telling us to look at the symbolism and investigate this sort of stuff. And very interesting, that symbolism. So just dig, guys, dig into the photographs, dig into all this information coming out. And I'm awaiting those 2,000 pages, most definitely 2,000 pages coming out that, I was thinking that maybe that's what we'll see today, or we'll see a future story pointing back to those Epstein documents in some way being released or allowed out today. So we'll see about that. Creepy stuff coming, nevertheless. And Adam Schiff, last political thing, we'll move on to physics and UFOs next. Adam Schiff tweeting about deep fakes. Just want to talk about this because deep fakes, the deep state folks themselves and the media, they've been trying to get ahead of this story for well over a year now. But these deep fakes, they're saying the Russians, or there'll be these hackers, probably these conspiracy theorists that are utilizing artificial intelligence technology to make these deep fakes. But of course, they're trying to get ahead of any sort of incriminating evidence that comes out against them. Photos, videos, etc. So deep fakes, yeah, we know why Adam Schiff is really talking about deep fakes. What goes on at that Standard Hotel? What goes on there, man? I got a lot of questions. And now getting into some physics stories. So here, time. Scientists just teleported an object into space for the first time. A lot of people tweeting this, sharing it, so I want to talk about it here. The story says that a team of researchers in China sent a photon, from the ground to an orbiting satellite more than 300 miles above through a process known as, of course, they call it quantum entanglement. That's their way of saying all points in space and time are connected, according to MIT. So they say some Chinese researchers sent photons a few hundred miles into space. As if this hasn't happened before. This is the first time. Time says here. And we very well know, just define what a unacknowledged special access project is. Research into these secret space programs or these black projects and what these corporate contractors and the military industrial complex has really been doing since even all the way back in the 50s, even the Germans in World War II and many of the American corporations during World War II. There was a race. There was a race to get the anti-gravity technologies, the zero-point energy technologies, the consciousness technologies too, understand how the mind can work and thoughts can shape matter and remote view and etc. So first time? No, man, there's been flying saucers, triangles, shit zipping around our solar system for decades. And those craft work with the very same, quote, quantum entanglement principles. It's just a lot of people get lost with the semantics. Quantum entanglement. Basically, all points in space and time are connected. You can send information in the form of electricity or matter from point to point, longitudinally in space. The craft do this, boop, boop, dematerialize, basically portal, rematerialize somewhere else. You can do this with information. So think, we've got these cell phones these days that use Wi-Fi, they use bitstream data. We don't need these. We could have quantum devices that send from device to device anywhere on the planet and don't need to use these giant cell towers and this harmful electrosmog. That's what Tesla was really talking about in his quote from the 1920s, where you had two devices that could send data back and forth. It's using the ether, using the fact that all points in space and time are connected through the ether, and not through Wi-Fi, 4G, 5G, all this nonsense. Anyway, more on that later. Next, how about Area 51? Feds warn UFO enthusiasts against storming Area 51. The military, quote, stands ready. And so many thoughts on this one. Number one, I mean, what a convenient story this is for the deep state. I mean, there's so many things that they can use this story for, which is why we're seeing it all over the media right now. Because number one, it's just an innocent story about storming Area 51. Number one, they can paint UFO believers or anybody discussing this as crazy people. Why would you storm Area 51? Number two, look here, not there. It makes all the eyes look at Area 51 and not elsewhere for UFO secrets. Let's be real. There's nothing that's going to be at Area 51. They've been directing people's attention towards there for decades because nothing's there. Everything else is elsewhere. If you want UFO secrets, you storm Langley. You storm Lockheed's headquarters. What's Raytheon got? What's Boeing got? What's the Air Force have at Wright Pat? What's at China Lake? What's down there in Antarctica, right? So, no, not Area 51. And also, another thing that they're subtly doing, you might not notice unless you're really deep into all this stuff, but they're also pushing the limited hangout UFO stories with this. Very subtly, but they're doing it, as CNN reports on this. Same thing, feds warn against storming Area 51 with the same exact headline. Gosh, you're seeing the secure drop in action there. All the mainstream outlets getting their news wires from the intelligence agencies and the assets, just go and spread them. But boom, there's that. But then you see the video of To the Stars Academy's gimbal or their Tic Tac video. So it's the video that's coming from Tom DeLonge's initiative, UFO Disclosure Initiative, To the Stars Academy, the one that the New York Times and all these other corporate fake news media has really been pushing. It's their UFO diversion, distraction. They're setting up all their gatekeepers, and they're just trying to undermine a lot of disclosure operations, full disclosure operations going on. So that's one more thing they're doing with this story. But nevertheless, the memes from it, there's some pretty freaking hilarious ones, not going to lie. I've shared a few. But we need to understand the big picture with this story. They're selling us a lot of BS, and they're trying to really warp people's minds with it, which is why they're spreading it so much. And speaking of To the Stars Academy, that UFO disclosure, quote disclosure, more like partial disclosure outfit. A couple of things with that. Number one, they made a tweet a few days ago. They're asking for a second round of funding, new investors. So that means we're probably going to see more stories come out in the mainstream media about this. Whatever they're going to say, release new videos, or they'll have some sort of lead that's basically set up for them by any insider or intelligence connections they have. So they're setting them up with leads, you see, and then allowing To the Stars to be that outfit that brings it out to the mainstream, of course, with a lot of twisted context and stuff they're not saying. But check out this photo. It's really interesting seeing this photo, because if you look at it here, it almost looks like Antarctica. Flip that upside down. Take that photo, flip it upside down, move your head, flip your mobile. It looks like something either shooting out of Antarctica or crashing into it. Nevertheless, there's some beam of light, and it totally looks like Antarctica. So I would not be surprised, point I want to make here, I would not be surprised if To the Stars is the first company, group, organization that's green-lighted to go mainstream and send maybe some sort of film crew or do a production about something in Antarctica, and then that's a part of the deep state's UFO diversion distraction, right? I mean, how incredible of a chess move that would be in the battle for disclosure, the info war going on, the deep state totally distracting everybody with something out of Antarctica that could be real, actually there, but they're only giving us a tiny little sliver of it, and then a lot of else, 10% of untruth with a lot of truth. That's how they sell their controlled opposition. And funny enough, speaking of controlled opposition, Tom DeLonge had to tweet yesterday saying, I love this person Jason here's thoughts. He's always been so supportive and rational. I appreciate his words here. And the tweet was, Tom isn't controlled. He's free to say what he wants when he wants, and his narrative has remained the same since he started talking about all this. Well, of course, going back to the WikiLeaks emails, seeing the connections that Tom DeLonge has with all this, connections to John Podesta, connections to a lot of other questionable ex-intelligence guys, potentially current intelligence guys, and ex-corporate guys, Lockheed, others. If Tom isn't controlled, all right. If he's not controlled, well, then he's a useful idiot, as they say. He's not a conscious deceiver, so he's being the useful idiot. And if he's not controlled, I would like Tom to tweet right now that Pizzagate's real and QAnon is real too. That'd be funny, right? I don't think he'll do that. Nevertheless, Tom DeLonge controlled? Yeah, I think he probably is. And let's move on into talking chemtrails now. So shifting from space and UFOs to chemtrails. Let's take a look at Serial Brain's article here about what he's basically saying is chemtrails or geoengineering programs being turned for good. Okay, and what I want to say about this. Now, what I'm going to say here is not any sort of attack on Serial Brain. First of all, I've never read too much of his work, but I've read bits and pieces in the past, and his work, maybe last year, a lot of it I liked, right? But recent decodes of his, I just haven't vibed with the information. It's not him, I'm just taking a look at the information itself, and I'm not necessarily resonating with it. He's been saying things like 5G is under control by Trump, and in some way, shape, or form, not necessarily describing exactly how, but it's been turned good. And same thing about this, is that he's saying or claiming chemtrails are being turned good, but a lot of the conclusions I'm seeing are based on very flimsy pretenses. Serial Brain's been getting very into the gematria. And gematria is basically assigning a numerical value to a word or groups of words. And Serial Brain takes that gematria, that number in words, and tries to connect it with the gematria of other words, the numbers of other words. And I find value in it situationally, but I think with that, a lot of people can take it way too far and then start getting into the confirmation bias thing, and then they're just so caught up in this theory that they're going with that they're connecting dots that don't really connect. You kind of see what I'm saying? So it sounds nice to believe that 5Gs and chemtrails have been turned for good in some way, but I need more definitive proof of that, just me personally. And going through these images, there's a lot of graphics he's made, but a lot of them, again, just get into the gematria of it. So here's an example, the reference to airports that Trump made. Serial Brain was basically decoding Trump's Independence Day speech and thinking Trump was telling us that chemtrails have been turned good in the Independence Day speech. So again, I'm all for doing decodes like this. That is what we're dealing here with this intel war going on, but just don't take the decodes too far, So here's some, gematria of Fort McHenry is 27, same as JFK Airport, which is 27. But my thought is, how did JFK get brought into this, that airport? Serial Brain saying the reference to airports was not a mistake. It was intentional and is validated by Fort McHenry. I think it was intentional, but I think saying airports a couple of days before Jeffrey Epstein got arrested at an airport, I think that's more of a connection, more plausible than bringing JFK into the picture and then Trump saying airports because chemtrails are good. So again, here's one example. There's a lot more. I'm just not vibing with it like the 5G one. So that's my thoughts on that. But nevertheless, the gematria stuff is interesting situationally. That's just my thoughts on that. Being the objective reporter that I am. Objective with a little bit of subjective, right? I show you the evidence and the data, and then I give you a little bit of my opinion as to why I think this is that, I don't want to just send people out there with info and post it without any sort of decoded theory or analyzing, because that's just, it's not guiding. We're trying to guide with this information. But that's that. Moving on to vaccines. So Politico is reporting here that Donald Trump is ordering a drive for improved flu vaccines, readying an executive order that would direct the Department of Health and Human Services to overhaul the development of flu vaccines and encourage more Americans to get vaccinated. say, now here's the source. Again, anytime you read the mainstream media, any article actually of any media, always see who they're sourcing and who they're actually linking to, so you can see the graphics or the potential source or non-source they might have. Politico is saying that 9 people with knowledge of the plan, according to internal documents reviewed by Politico. So that's what they're claiming, how they got this story from. And let's see, I don't see any internal documents listed here. It is being reported by Politico #1, so we always have to be careful with anything Politico reports. We know they like to spread a lot of BS to stoke the fire out there. So I don't know. I'm just going to I wouldn't get caught up with this initially. It could be some sort of misconstrued news. And also, when I see this, it says Trump is readying an executive order to overhaul the development of flu vaccines and encourage more Americans to get vaccinated. Let's parse that. What if this is a chess move? What if this is some sort of deep strategy to overhaul development of flu vaccines? I'm all for that, for sure. Take it out of the corporation's hands. This is the problem with a lot of these things, chemtrails included. That's one point I sort of missed in that last topic. Chemtrails, vaccines, free energy in the secret space programs. All this stuff is in corporation control, guys. That's how they've kept it a lot more secret. A lot of people think, oh, the government does this stuff. It's the government's fault. Not necessarily. It's the corporation's fault. They blackmail and pay off and get their cronies into political power and government, but it's really the corporations. And Trump overhauling the development of flu vaccines, I'm all for that. And the second part there, to encourage more Americans to get vaccinated. Now, this might trigger you. You might say, oh, why would Trump support vaccines? Well, optics, man. Public relations. You got to understand that. And it's a bitch to go down that road and just say, oh, man, Trump's got to support vaccines for the optics of it all right now. It sucks to say and it sucks to believe, but that's kind of what has to happen. Because that vaccine topic, that is a topic that is so hot that if Q really got into vaccines or Trump got into vaccines, I've even talked to a lot of my friends and acquaintances in the media community. They don't even really want to touch vaccines right now. They'll report on Q and all these other sorts of things, satanic practices and human trafficking, but even vaccines, it's just too touchy because the brainwashing is so effective on that topic. So this could just be for the PR. Trump doesn't want to get attacked. They don't want Q to get attacked, to get drawn into that anti-vax hole. So they're saying, oh, Trump, get your vaccines. This will be for more Americans to get vaccinated, but really it could be strategy to overhaul it. That's what I'm hoping. Of course, eyes on this, see how it goes in the future. And I think a lot of these topics, vaccines, overhauling the Federal Reserve, getting the technologies disclosed, Space Force, et cetera, term 2, man, we'll really see what term 2 brings us. So think long term. Don't just think short term, instant gratification. I want him to disclose this and this and this and this now. It's got to be easy. There's hundreds of millions of people out there that have no idea about how deep all this stuff really goes. You and I might, but they don't. So we have to think of that, and on a grand scale, collectively too. Last few topics, still on vaccines. There might be an executive order getting prepared to overhaul flu vaccines and, quote, encourage more Americans to get vaccinated. But nevertheless, when people do their research, it doesn't matter who says what. Doesn't matter if Trump says, yeah, get your vaccines, people really quickly to the media. People won't get vaccinated. News story out of Fox. Oakland Raiders Jalen Richard vows to keep children unvaccinated, cites his own research. So, hey, this is cool because at least some sports stars are getting smarter. A lot of them are getting dumber, but this dude's getting smarter, citing his own research. And this brings up an important point. Someone was going at it with me on Twitter the other day. I think they were well-meaning, but I couldn't tell if it was shill or not. But nevertheless, they were saying that because Trump and Q have not really touched on or gone into the vaccine topic, because Trump has mentioned that he, quote, supports vaccines before, that this guy's going to keep getting vaccinated. I'm like, that is the stupidest mindset to ever have, that sort of idol worship mindset. Number one, then what? You don't understand the optics of these sorts of things. And number two, I think I replied this on Twitter, like, if Trump hasn't talked about fluoride before, so you're going to go drink fluoride. You have to do your own research and make your own choices. Nobody knows everything. We all have room for improvement. Then again, some people know more things than others, but can they make those things public quite yet? And is there things that people in powerful positions have to say for certain reasons? So just do your own research, like this guy did for the Oakland Raiders. Come up to your own conclusions to make your own choices. And then story on Monsanto here. Very important story. Gets into some big topics. USDA scientists actually found a second GMO wheat variety identified from a not GMO field. Check this out. USDA investigators last week identified a second GMO wheat variety from samples found in a fallow farm field in Washington state, meaning that the GMO strains of wheat infected the crop. This was not a GMO crop. The strains infected this farmer's crop, and he found them there. The government service here announced that it performed further tests on volunteer wheat samples found last month, and 2 Monsanto varieties, these strains here, these numbers, which had previously been identified, were found again in a field. And get this, there were field trials done of these GMO strains about 15 to 20 years ago, but they were never commercialized by Monsanto, which of course is now owned by Bayer. We'll talk about that in a sec, but these GMO strains were never commercialized. What this means, think about it. Number one, GMO seeds are so virulent, they spread so easily that they can do one test crop. They can run a couple years of test crops, and the pollen, the wind will spread those seeds into the ecosystem, into the biosphere, and infect it. It's so easy. The corporations, the big ag corporations, sell us on the idea that, oh, we can keep this test crop contained. No, they can't. It's all bullshit, they tell us. So even their test crops are infecting fields 20 years later. Wheat, think gluten problems. People think, oh, I'm allergic to gluten. Well, the reason gluten's so bad is because they messed with the wheat years ago, and our digestive tracts aren't designed to handle that foreign DNA. Not just that, but think of the crops they do commercialize. Soy and corn and canola oil. Oh, yeah. You don't eat that stuff. Truly. Do your research into the food and don't put that in your body. If you want your mind to work, get your body to work. And then your mind will start seeing through their bullshit a lot easier. And you'll start living a better life, manifesting better stuff in your life, truly. So there's some news on that. We went through nearly everything I've wanted to go through except one thing, and that is those noctilucent clouds. So Science News here reports on night shining, quote, noctilucent, they're called. Noctilucent means night shining in Greek or Latin, I believe. These clouds have crept south this summer. So this is the story from a few days ago. Now, what's really intriguing about this is it's not just this year. It's happened for a few years now. I actually saw these in the summer of 2012. That's when I first learned about them. I saw these one night in Washington State here, so pretty south. You know, these things are creeping more south every year and being seen around the planet more and more. But I saw these with my own eyes, and I was really curious as to what these were. And I did some research, and I sort of synchronistically came across an article about noctilucent clouds. That's when I first figured out about them. And what they are is they are glowing clouds around the poles where the electromagnetic fields come into the Earth, and they're glowing clouds 50 miles up. 50 miles up, way higher even than the stratosphere. I think they're up in the mesosphere or something like that. So they're extremely high clouds, 10 times higher than those wispy cirrus clouds that you see day to day. So extremely high, ionic, meaning they're polarized. They're electrically glowing clouds. And that's an important point in this article is when you delve into it, their reason for these noctilucent clouds being seen more and more south of the North Pole and more north of the South Pole is because of increased moisture. They're saying that more moisture, extra wetness in the atmosphere is the reason that these are being seen around the globe more. And that's absolutely wrong. In this article, they actually don't even talk about the fact that these are polarized clouds. You can do a quick Google into noctilucent clouds and find that they're glowing because they're polarized. In this article, it doesn't say that. Simply just says they glow, they're beautiful, and that, oh, it's extra wetness. So they're trying to play off the real reason for them. And what's actually behind noctilucent clouds, but also this then doesn't allow them to discuss the real reason these are being seen more and more across the globe, and that is because electric changes going on with our solar system. Our whole solar system moving into a what some have termed the photon belt, or a more energetically dense region of space. So this is having a lot of effects on the Earth's magnetic field, on really the magnetic field of every single celestial body in our solar system, our sun, our Earth. A lot of cycles converging right now, folks. So that's one of the reasons this Great Awakening is happening and why it needs to happen right now, because a lot of big stuff, think big, bigger than the Earth, cosmically, galactically, is happening. Noctilucent clouds are a symptom of that. It's a simple symptom of these electromagnetic changes that are going on. We're seeing more and more glowing clouds. We're seeing all sorts of weird auroras, anomalies going on, and many other things too. You know, the Earth's magnetic field weakening, the sun going into its own minimum, and much great research out there about a solar flash or some sort of quantum solar transition. It's a change in base state of our sun, possibly within the next few decades. So a lot more on that coming soon. I've done some videos on that before that you can check out. And that's it for this one, guys. That's all I wanted to share with you in this one. How long we've been going for? 45 minutes. Good stuff. Just want to remind you guys, you can sign up for my newsletter on jordansather.com. You can go to the bottom there. If the pop-up doesn't come up for you, enter your email address in, and you can get all sorts of updates, things like that. And you can check out all the new things added to my shop there. Got Ormus, some new Orgonite. Got greens powder in. Good organic greens powder, Green Zone. Happy to come out with this stuff finally, because I want to offer solutions for people. I want to offer things people can utilize to actually heal themselves. So alkalinity, enzymes, probiotics, all sort of good stuff in Green Zone. Be talking about that much more in the future. Check that, jordansather.com. And that's all for this one, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. More coming, most definitely. Thanks, everybody.